Thank you. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have an icebreaker activity. If you would turn to somebody near you, next to you, that you do not know, and introduce yourself. Shake hands if you're comfortable.
Hi, I'm Brenda. Hi, I'm Victoria Solis. I'm with Garrett. I was going to say Moscow.
That is because truly we are all neighbors here, right?
Yes.
We are.
Yes, we are.
And we're going to be using guidelines for civil conversation and respect. Braver Angels is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that embraces respect, honesty, and responsible citizenship by teaching respectful communication skills through workshops and practicing those skills in debates, podcasts, and conferences. The driving force that fuels their mission is bringing Americans together to bridge the partisan divide and strengthen our democratic republic. The name came from the words of Abraham Lincoln in his first inaugural address when he said, "We have to call on our better angels to bring our nation together." And the name got changed to Braver Angels for many reasons, one of which we need to even be braver now than ever before. At Braver Angels, we stress the importance of listening. If you think about it, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We hope that all of us will learn something from each other today that we didn't know when we walked in the door. We are here to listen, to understand, and speak to be understood. We'll follow the basic rules of civility: no physical aggression, no verbal abuse, profanity, swearing, or yelling. We want you to be sincere and passionate without being dismissive of others' statements. Do not express contempt or ridicule or stereotyping of anyone. So my question for you all is, do I have your permission, if it should happen that we have a disruption today, to gently help people make a course correction if they inadvertently veer off of these guidelines? Do I have your permission?
Yes.
Thank you.
Of the situation. So what are we talking about when we say deregulation is going to help housing or make housing more affordable? Well, often those laws come down to local zoning, right? So the federal government really has nothing to say about that. And what often happens with local zoning is you get, some of you might have heard of this, the NIMBY effect, right? Not in my backyard. So we have a lot of that from what I've seen here in Lewiston, right? We don't want these homeless people in our backyard, right? Get them out of that park, don't open that shelter, don't do that, things like that. Well, generally speaking, these people that are in that situation that you don't want in your backyard, I mean, they often are born here, like, so they're part of your community. So I'm speaking to people who might say those sorts of things. So, I guess I'm just looking for more certainty and more clarity on, what the policies will be going forward. There's always room for improvement, but given the rhetoric and given what has occurred so far in the young tenure of the second time around of this administration, it doesn't instill confidence in me. So that's about it, thanks.
To put it shortly, the number of people over age 65 surpassed the number of people, youth, under age 18 in 2018. That threshold is not expected to be reached nationwide until about 2033. In other words, the Valley is 15 years ahead of the rest of the country in aging. Based on median age of the Valley's population, as well as the percent of the population over age 65, We are the oldest urban population center in the entire Pacific Northwest. Our statistics match Florida. And there have been articles in the Lewiston Tribune on this subject. Again, based on median age and percent of the population over age 65. No other metropolitan area over 50,000 people in Montana, Idaho, Washington, or Oregon hits our numbers. We're it. We're an island of old, wise, experienced people in a sea of younger, inexperienced, unfocused people, right? My message to Congress, our elected officials, is that investments in senior citizens benefit the whole community. It actually pays for itself. It's not charity. I want to leave you with a parable that I like to share it. I heard it when I was doing work with the disability community. Back about 30 years ago, when cities across the country took curb cuts in the sidewalks, curb cuts seriously. We got to put in curb cuts. They're making us put in curb cuts at every intersection because you know those people in wheelchairs got to have curb cuts, so we have to put them in. What was discovered a few years later when curb cuts became the norm all over is that they benefited more than just people in wheelchairs. They benefited parents pushing strollers. They benefited bicyclists, skateboarders, people pulling luggage on wheels, and people pushing cargo carts to their stores. They had a benefit that rippled through the community and benefited all of us. Many of the programs that you've heard us talk about today are like that. A community that has services and is a great place for senior citizens is a community that benefits all of us, not just a single sector of our society. Keep that in mind and feel free to use that parable any way you want for any other circumstance that's like that.
Good afternoon. I had a couple observations before I start my speech to them. You don't have to raise your hand, but I'm wondering how many people here are under 50 years of age. That to me says a lot about our current political situation. So many young people have basically withdrawn. We have to be able to engage them in conversation to get that back. We can't be doing this forever, right? There's a little thing called nature. Anyway, I have a couple of things. The first one is to Representative Fulcher. And I'm asking you, sir, to please do your job. And one of the things about your job is that you engage with your constituents. And when you have an election that comes up, you engage with the people who are running against you. To not show them the respect to engage in that says that they are somehow beneath you. And there's no one within this state is beneath you, sir. Her name is Kaylee Peterson, by the way. If you're not willing to debate Kaylee, that says a lot more about you than it does about her. And I would offer to Senator Risch, who's one of the richest men in the Senate. He's a career politician. I kind of wonder how you got all that money being a career politician. Do your job. There's three legs to the stool of the American government, and we learned that. We all took government in high school. We didn't get as far as you in our knowledge. But we know that there's three to the stability of the country. And right now, the three of you are not providing the strength for your end to keep this society stable.
So to our congressional delegation, I would very much like you to address the administration's denial and erasure of history and education by denying Smithsonian exhibits, denying funding to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the constant threat of book banning and the silence of our educational institutions. I urge each of you to protect our constitutionally protected First Amendment rights by resisting these changes. Thank you very much.
The Smithsonian museum is presently under attack, as well as museums across the country. And I would like to challenge you three gentlemen to personally visit the Smithsonian when you get back to Washington to truly determine whether there is anything offensive in that fine organization. While you're here in Idaho, I'd like to challenge you to visit the historical museums and societies in your own state to determine whether or not anything offensive is occurring. All of these institutions represent what is good and wonderful about us and what we have accomplished as this civilization has developed.
My question is on tariffs. Tariffs are broadly panned by economists, except for a select few that this administration has hired. Tariffs distort comparative advantage between nations and producers in those nations. They subsidize inefficient production, and much like a sales tax, they're regressive. It's a regressive tax on individuals. You gentlemen have the responsibility to regulate international trade. My question is, why has Congress abdicated that responsibility to an administration that doesn't seem to understand sound economics and has weaponized tariffs? Thank you.
The chaotic tariff situation is only one aspect, and the previous gentleman has pretty much talked about that. The irresponsible way it's been done has been very damaging to farms, created chaos in our markets. Another thing that's not helping, not so much in Idaho, but in some of the more, where a lot of fresh food and vegetables are produced, and fruits, and I like my vegetables. These immigration and customs enforcement, or known as ICE raids, are creating pure chaos among farmers who have perishable crops that need to be picked within days. And the chaos created by our poor, crummy immigration system that should have been fixed by that bill that President Trump asked you folks not to pass because he wanted to run on the issue. It would have been a very helpful bill making sense of our immigration system, and I am upset about the nixing of that bill and these Gestapo raids. They're also trashing other small businesses, not just farmers. That's my point.
I come today to ask for sensible changes to how our immigrants are treated in this country. Immigrants come to this country wanting a better life. They are not coming here to commit crimes, as has been stated by our president. Most people who have been working within the labyrinth of regulations related to immigration have now to live a nightmare where they're likely, if they're on the street or even if they're going to work, could be snatched up at any moment by someone who totally disregards the requirement for habeas corpus.
Senator Risch, Senator Crapo, and Representative Fulcher. I totally understand and sympathize with your concerns about ridding our country of criminals. However, I have very serious concerns about how our country is handling this issue, and I personally know people across the political spectrum here who share my concerns. I mean across the whole spectrum. Reports indicate the majority of immigrants being arrested and detained are not criminals. I truly believe that the unprecedented power and actions of masked ICE agents and the horrific conditions in private detention centers, which my taxes are paying for, do not reflect our American values, yours or mine. I have a personal concern about the safety of my own family members. We adopted our daughter from Korea. She became a naturalized citizen at the age of 5 months, grew up, married a Filipino man, and they had 2 boys who are currently teenagers. They live in the suburbs of LA. My 2 grandsons are typical teens, often sporting hoodies, enjoying their newly earned driving privileges, and were used to driving with their friends to LA, often. However, now, because they are not white, and because of the way ICE is conducting arrests, we have insisted that they not go to LA and that they carry their passport cards with them at all times. Although we told them this may not even protect them, since masked ICE agents don't even ask for ID when they scoop up people to reach their quotas. This is of great concern to many of us. And I ask that you use your power in Congress to do these things. 1, provide stringent government oversight of ICE. And 2, support an investigation of all private detention centers to assure that all detainees receive adequate food, water, medical services, and sanitary living space, and the right to a trial.
One thing that very much will continue to exacerbate the problem of housing affordability in our country are these ICE raids that everyone has already commented on. Who works on those crews? A lot of undocumented and adjacent, because they're reaching beyond just undocumented people with their efforts. So like I said, I'm looking for actual solutions, and I would argue that you're not going to get there just through deregulation, that the core of the problem is a lot more complex than that, one of which being the cost of just base construction, even before you start getting into the regulatory environment. We are in Idaho. It is not a very strict regulatory environment, and yet we still have these housing cost issues. So I'm looking for more beyond platitudes other than we're going to get there via deregulation. Thank you.
Where I live right now, which is a temporary place for me, even though I own the trailer, they went from $340 a month to $600 a month. That's a 90% increase in rent. So can you imagine people who are on fixed income and who are senior citizens get retirement? It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. So the people that are representatives and senators, I've even sent letters out to Foreman, to the president. I've done all kinds of stuff, even dealing with Kathy in meetings and so forth. It needs to have a stop put to it. We need to establish a law or a bill.
Our government only gives us a certain amount of increase. We can't live on it, not nowadays. And if they don't lock down the rent increase to where it follows the guidelines of poverty rate level, then we're going to have total chaos across the nation. We need to stop and fix this problem.
They had a town hall here a few months ago, and I raised a question about number 47 not wanting to exit the presidency. And we all know what happened January 6th. So now he's back in office, which should have been a red flag. But anyway, he's there. And right now he is taking over the DC police, employed the National Guard. He wants to invoke martial law. That way he could stay in the presidency and not be a person that has to leave.
What I'm most concerned about is the presence of the National Guard in our major cities. under the guise of high crime. And if you look at the statistics, at least in Washington, D.C., they're at an all-time low in their crime. The firing of Erica McIntyre from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics because President Trump didn't like the information that she shared. Investigating John Bolton this week, illegally moving Ghislaine Maxwell to a much easier prison, the redistricting or the gerrymandering in Texas, threatening Jerome Powell, and the extortion of media companies like CBS. You appear, and not just the three of you, but many Republicans appear to be turning a blind eye to these actions. And in doing so, you are normalizing them. These are not normal actions in a democracy. So my question to the three of you and to many of your colleagues is, what has to happen in this government for you to stand up to this administration and stop these very undemocratic actions? Thank you.
I'm addressing this to all three of you, but most particularly to Senator Risch because of your chairmanship and because you used to seem to realize the threat that Vladimir Putin poses. Now, lately, you've backed away from that. Can't imagine why. I want all three of you, and most particularly you, Senator Risch, to prevent President Trump from selling the Ukrainian people down the river.
And I have friends in Norway, Great Britain, Germany, and Japan, and Australia that I speak with regularly. It may come as a surprise to you, but people in these other nations actually follow American politics very closely, more closely than most Americans actually. They're extremely educated, they're well informed about the things that are going on. And what they say is their people of their countries are losing faith in America. They're losing faith in our ability to maintain our government in a consistent fashion and be consistent business partners for them. What they are doing in response to the chaos in our current government is they are looking to other nations to fill the gaps, primarily for industries such as agriculture and manufacturing. We're coming into a space very quickly here where these other nations are not going to want to do business with us anymore because we're just not reliable business partners anymore. What effect do you think this is going to have on Idaho agricultural producers and manufacturers and their access to international markets if these other nations simply don't want to have anything to do with us because we're just too chaotic of a nation to deal with?
Senators Risch and Crapo and Representative Fulcher. Today it was announced the starvation in Gaza is now a famine, meaning that the lack of food is so severe that several people are dying of starvation daily. Since the end of May this year, nearly 2,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli soldiers as they try to access food supplies. Netanyahu supports this and we support him. Hamas's October attack, as horribly wrong as it was, did not appear out of nowhere. Israel's response is to ratchet up war crimes in an attempt to eliminate the Palestinians who are innocent pawns. It is in the power of our legislature to improve protection for the people of Gaza. So my question for you is, how can you justify continuing to arm Israel with American weapons of war while utterly failing to ensure safe access to food for the people of Gaza? That was from Marilyn Beckett in Moscow. Thank you.